Hi, Jack. My name's Dean. I'm calling from Australia. Jack, I just want a question about a 357 Magnum round when fired from a rifle. I'm looking at buying the IMI 357 Magnum Timberwolf, which is a pump-action rifle. The reason being you can't have semi-automatics here and you can't have pump-action shotguns. So this is the next best thing for me as a fun shooter. It's kind of like a pump-action. My questions relate to what sort of distance would a 357 be effective and accurate? What size game could you shoot with that size bullet? What types of loads or bullets would be best in it for different things like personal defense and stuff like that? Do you think it would be good as a home defense gun? Like I said, can't have a pump action. And can you put 38 special, sort of load it down, shoot smaller game, maybe let the kids shoot it like that? I just want to buy it because it looks great and it's just for fun. I've got a few other things, but it's a toy I'd be interested in. I'm just wondering what you think about that cartridge out of a rifle. Thanks again.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now, I love 357 Magnum rifles. I think they're one of the most underrated tools and weapons out there. And I'll give some answers to this. I'll also let you know that the caller did follow up with me and say I'm not really interested in long range shooting at all. I'm trying to shoot 300 yards. I understand the limitations of that type of thing. And, he's in a unique situation being in Australia with pump being something he can get in a rifle but not a shotgun. And of course, semi-autos are just out, and I'm not sure where Australia comes down on lever actions. But if they allow a pump action rifle, you'd think they'd add a lever action. So I'm going to kind of catch this right up front and say everything I say about this particular rifle or pump 357s applies to lever action 357s or single shot 357s. So let's start out with what I would consider the best all-around load for the 357 Magnum rifles in general. 158 grain flat point, good solid bullet, something like a Hornady XTP, but again the flat point, not the hollow point. You're pushing higher velocities, and the hollow point ammunition made for 357 cartridges opens up really, really fast, especially at closer ranges, and may not get the penetration you're looking for. You can play up and down. You're wanting 125 grain, I think, is toward your bottom end there, and your upper end being like 180. But I think you'll find the overall performance of a good flat point, 158 grain, and then when you download to 38 special, there could be a case for going up 180 grain, but 158 grain wad cutters, semi-wad cutter type, hard cast lead, good stuff as well. Okay, so let's start talking about some performance here. The 357 Magnum is a good handgun for hunting. A lot of people have shot deer-sized game and even larger up to elk. I don't know that I'd recommend it for elk, but it's been done. Until the advent of the 44 Magnum, the 357 Magnum was the most powerful handgun in the world. And it was used by big game hunters all around the world to take big game. In Australia, big game is what? A kangaroo? Right? So just about anything down there that you would have to shoot. I guess there's some water buffalo here and there. I don't know that I'd go hitting them with a round like that. You might have some feral water buffalo down there that are huntable, but Australian big game, no problem. Americans, you're talking about deer, no problem. And I've done it, so I can tell you it works just fine. What happens when you put it in a rifle, though? Well, it becomes more powerful than a cartridge very few people are really familiar with, but the 357 Maximum. Back in the 80s, Dan Wesson made the 357 Max, and what they did is they made the Magnum a little bit longer, mainly so that you couldn't accidentally put it in something that it wasn't supposed to go in at higher pressures. And then they put more powder in it. And it was a great cartridge, and it was considered the most powerful handgun in the world because of the gains in energy that it had when it was released. And I guess I think it was about 82 that this came out. But it quickly fell out of favor because all of that powder in a revolver burned out the forcing cone on the barrel very, very quickly, and it made it impractical. And then Thompson Center brought it back in the various single shot. The Contender, and I can't think of the other one. And then a lot of people that like handy rifles like I did before they stopped making them, you get a 357 Magnum barrel and you get a reamer and you ream it out and you got a 357 Maximum. But in that handgun, it was a very powerful cartridge, and no one thought twice about using it on something like a deer. Well, when you take a 357 Magnum and you put it into an 18-inch barreled rifle, you get about 100 feet per second more velocity than the Maximum did. And what does it look like? Well, it's about 1,700 feet per second. With when I get this technical, I always do, put things down. But ballistic coefficient on 158 grain flat point is about 0.199. That's its ability to fly. Longer and thinner, higher ballistic coefficient. That's relatively low. But at the muzzle, that'll give you 1,700 foot-pounds of feet per second and about 1,000 foot-pounds of energy. We move out to 100 yards. We're still cooking along at 1,387 feet per second and 675 foot-pounds of energy. Well, it just so happens that you're right about that point, just a hair under what a 357 Magnum is out of a revolver at the muzzle. So if you think you could shoot a deer with a 357 Magnum from 10 feet away effectively, as long as you can hit it with a rifle, you get the same ballistic results at 100 yards. It's actually relatively flat shooting in what you would call moderate ranges. Now, moderate ranges, we're not talking 250 yards. But this is from Hornady's ballistic calculator right here. I dialed in that exact load with a 0 at 50 yards. If I zero that at 50 yards, it will be 0.3 inches low at 25. It will be 0.6 inches low at 75, and it will be 2.2 inches low at 100 yards. That means if we zero at 50 yards, we are dead on. We are within margin of shooter error on deer size game or kangaroo size game out to 100 yards, and we are definitely lethal out to 100 yards. In fact, we're only down 5 inches at 125 yards, and we're down 9 inches at 150 yards. So if we know our range and we know our hold, we can shoot 150 yards, no problem with this round, and I think that's pushing it. But we're still packing about 500 pounds of energy. Now, I know the books say you're supposed to have 1,000 foot-pounds of energy to kill a deer, maybe a kangaroo too, but the reality is 500 pounds of energy in a 35 caliber projectile that has good penetration with good bullet placement will do it every time. I've shot feral hogs up over 200 pounds with a little NEF handy rifle and 357 Magnum. I've shot deer with it. I've shot exotic game like exotic rams, and it's amazing how lethal and how quick kill I've gotten out of it every time I've used it with lung shots. And that's all I've ever done with it is lung shots. I think I shot one deer that I took behind the ear, and that one went down like dynamite went off in his skull. But it absolutely does work fabulously. Downloading it to 38 Special is a great idea, and going into something like, I really recommend everybody get a copy of Modern Reloading by Richard Lee, and I have both the modern one, and there's an older model that is a red copy. If you can find that used, get that one. It's got some older loads in it, and go to the lightest 38 Special loads you can get, and do that in either 158 or 180 grain lead, and what you have is an amazing penetrating round that expands very little, and it sounds like a pellet gun going off. I do the same thing with 44 Magnum with the lightest 44 Special load I can find, and that particular load will penetrate 7.5 inches of pressure-treated wood at 25 yards. That's still quite lethal on deer-sized game. I don't know how I tried with the 357, but it gives you an idea of what can be done. By going to hard-cast lead 38 Special loads, you can shoot smaller game, especially with headshots, without blowing it the hell up. As far as the kids shooting with 38 Specials, there's no reason the kids can't shoot it with the heaviest 357 Magnum loads, because you know what? There's almost no recoil in a rifle from a 357. As far as the IMI, it's now called IWI as the company, Israeli Weapons or something like that. I'll put a link to their website in the show notes. They sell under in America, by the way. The gun you're asking about, I was like, damn it, now I'm going to have to buy one because I thought it was cool. They're not being made anymore. So if you can find one and you want one, I would get it. I went on Gunbroker. There's one available. It's got 2 bids on it. It's currently at $775. Uberte also made a pump-action 357 Magnum rifle, a little bit larger frame, not that small short barrel, kind of an old-style looking gun, kind of cool. Also not made anymore. So if you want to buy something currently being made in 357 Magnum, you're looking at Thompson Center, Contender or Encore. You're looking at finding a used handy rifle if you can in that caliber. You're looking at Winchester, Marlin, Henry, etc. All of the lever actions. And you know what it makes me think? There should be a good, affordable pump action 357 Magnum for bush hunting deer size game. It's a fantastic round, and it makes me wish that Ruger would bring back the Deerfield carbine in both 44 Magnum like they originally made it, and in 357 Magnum. It would be a fantastic, fantastic round. Those of you that are skeptical of what the 357 Magnum can do, get your hands on one and play with it. I'm telling you, we used to sit shooting sporting clays at 100 yards on a berm offhand with ours all the time, and it was amazing how dead on that gun was out to about 100 yards, and everything I ever shot with, all I can say is you put a hole through an animal's lungs, through both lungs, and in the words of Jack O'Connor, it'll run about as far as it can hold its breath and not much further.